The United States of America is one country Nelson Mandela visited after he was released from prison. The purpose was to thank the Americans who supported the liberation movement during the struggle years. The relationship between South Africa and the United States of America was not an easy one at times. The two main parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, were standing on opposite sides of the struggle in the fight against apartheid. However, at times, in a non-partisan manner, they supported the liberation struggle at critical moments.
I'd like to say I was very pleased that indeed we said we shall need to work together even more intensely than we have in the past, because with effect on the 1st of January, South Africa, of course, joins the Security Council as a non-permanent member.
After 1994, diplomatic relations were strengthened.
I have not given up that I'll be able to persuade President George Bush not to gamble, not to take this line. And because the whole Muslim world is against the strike against Iraq. It's not only the Muslim world, but almost all of us are not in favor of that.
The United States can and must work with South Africa and all our friends in Africa to fight poverty, disease, war, famine, and flood. We do so because it is right and because it is in our interests. If we want a world of rising growth and expanding markets, a world in which our security is not threatened by the spread of armed conflict, a world in which bitter ethnic and religious differences are resolved by force of argument, not force of arms.
President Nelson Mandela's successor, Thabo Mbeki, continued in the same vein. It was Mbeki and Bill Clinton who signed an AGOA. Later, it was under the Republican president where PEPFAR was launched in the year 2003.
We are convinced that the government and people of the United States are critical and long-term partners in our struggle to address the many challenges facing both our two countries as well as many other parts of the world. These challenges, which require our collective wisdom and action, and to which you've referred, Mr. President, include the human threat posed by deepening underdevelopment, widespread poverty, diseases such as AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis, as well as violent conflicts and wars afflicting especially the continent from which we come, Africa.
I've expressed my concerns about the situation to the President. He shares my concerns that the situation is dire. And now's the time for action.
However, the two leaders differed on the Iraq war.
This phenomenon of international terrorism in Iraq, and of course the efforts that are being made to deal with that, we would be as concerned about that matter as they are. Raises questions about, which have been mentioned, beyond that, the need to unite the population of Iraq and to ensure that there's no section of the population of Iraq that feels in any way marginalized by the processes that are taking place, excluded from the constitutional settlement, excluded from governance and so on, so that to make sure that everybody comes into this settlement.
Mbeki's predecessor, Nelson Mandela, shared the same views.
What I'm against is the fact that Bush should say, within weeks, I'm going to strike at Iraq. Who the hell is he to try to dictate to the world?
Former South African President Kgalema Motlanthe also visited the United States of America. He also interacted with the U.S. administration during the G20 and the G7 meetings.
We want long-term investors who can move with us in concert, because we really see ourselves as an integral part of Africa as a whole, and that We want investors who can partner with us as we experience the African continent's growth.
President Motlante's successor, Jacob Zuma, also hosted the U.S. President Barack Obama. Both countries voted in support of the resolution that led to the invasion of Libya, where Muammar Gaddafi was killed.
We today would like to renew our commitment to continue to work with all of you as part of the community of nations in resolving the socio-economic development, human rights, and security challenges facing humanity. We remain committed to resolutions of global challenges through international agreed mechanisms. We believe on the centrality of the United Nations.
We too must act on behalf of peace. There are too many people who happily embrace Madiba's legacy of racial reconciliation, but passionately resist even modest reforms that would challenge chronic poverty and growing inequality. There are too many leaders who claim solidarity with Madiba's struggle for freedom, but do not tolerate dissent from their own people.
During his first term in office, President Donald Trump did not visit South Africa. However, Mbeki says the U.S. ambassador was always accessible.
You're talking about new ideas.
In this lighter moment at the World Economic Forum in Davos,
this is the population that represents.
During President Joe Biden's tenure, America supported South Africa's just energy transition. However, relations were strained by the Russia-Ukraine war. Washington was putting pressure on South Africa not to support Russia. Top U.S. diplomat in South Africa accused Pretoria of supplying arms to Russia, allegations that were denied by South African government.
Our involvement in all this has proven and demonstrated that we are neutral, and we've been encouraging both Ukraine and Russia to find a peaceful solution.
Despite the U.S. failing to provide any evidence, the then ambassador pronouncements led to South Africa's currency tumbling past 19 rand to the US dollar. The US ambassador brigade was summoned by the then Minister of International Relations, Dr. Naledi Pandor, to explain his allegations. Ambassador Brigade stood his ground and affirmed his statement about the docking of the Russian Lady R ship on South Africa's shores.
The government of South Africa is in fact not aligned. Amongst the things that we noted were the docking of the Russian cargo ship Lady R in Simonstown between December 6th and December 8th, 2022, which we are confident uploaded weapons, ammunition onto that vessel in Simonstown as it made its way back to Russia, which does not suggest to us the actions of a non-aligned country.
Additionally, non-partisan calls were growing from both the Democrats and the Republicans for the withdrawal of AGOA. After many consultations, President Joe Biden announced that AGOA will be renewed. The AGOA debate is raging on again after President Donald Trump won elections in November 2024. Washington has cited the allegations made by AfriForum and Solidarity that there is a campaign to marginalize the Afrikaner group, a reason for its hostile action against South Africa. These allegations were, however, dismissed by many in South Africa, including Afrikaners themselves.
Terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things.
South Africa was in a process of engaging U.S. administration on this matter. The expulsion of the South African ambassador from Washington has complicated the diplomatic relations between the two countries. Rasool has, however, maintained that his replacement will continue with the work he has started by reaching out to the Trump's administration to consolidate diplomatic and trade relations.
Our relationship with America over 50 years has not always been with the White House. It has sometimes been with Congress, and it has always been with the people of the United States of America. When the White House and Congress declared us as terrorists, it was the dock workers in San Francisco that refused to touch South African goods. When Congress did not want to have sanctions, it was the American people who did not eat our fruit and did not touch our goods. And so we have this relationship that we must reset and we must rebuild. And we must hope that President Cyril Ramaphosa will be able to pick up where we left off. But we cannot have a simplistic idea that while we say there must be an ambassador, that you must put a white ambassador for a white president in the United States.
The president appoints ambassadors, and it is within his sole right to appoint ambassadors.
South Africa will have to prepare for more hostile actions from the United States with the aim of preventing any further economic impact. Sophie Mokoena, SABC News, Johannesburg.